Hey, what is going on, guys? It's DK. Back at you with another video here to predict the 3-game NFL Thanksgiving main slate on Draftkings. Before I get into the video, if you guys are new to the channel, my name's DK. I make daily videos breaking out NBA, NFL, PGA, and esports data fantasy sports slates. I want to thank you guys again for the continued support on this channel. It is greatly appreciated. Currently right now, 5.77 thousand subscribers. If you enjoy the content, would really appreciate it if you leave a like button on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you know when I upload videos, you know when I go live. I will be live streaming. I normally do 30 minutes for the show on slates, an hour for the main slate. Since this is a 3-game slate, I'll do 45 minutes before lock on my YouTube channel, going over everything. We have some injuries to monitor, and then I'll, of course, answer all your guys' questions as well. So make sure to check the live stream Thursday morning. And also, if you guys cannot watch the YouTube videos, I do upload an Apple Podcast. The link is in the description below. It's just the DK DFS show. But with that all out of the way, let's jump into the video. So, super excited to talk about Thanksgiving slate. Definitely one of my favorite slates of the year. Before we talk about the players and the prices, let's take a look at the Vegas odds. We only have 2 of the 3 games out right now. So we have Detroit and Houston currently right now, 51 over-under. Houston are 2.5-point favorites. We have Washington and Dallas at 46.5 over under. The Cowboys are 2.5-point favorites, and we don't currently have the Pittsburgh and Baltimore game up right now. I assume it's probably going to be on the lower end. Both defenses are pretty solid. So, yeah, we'll talk about that more obviously in the live stream Thursday morning. But let's kick it off here with quarterback. And at the top, we have Deshaun Watson at 7.4K. I think he's the clear quarterback play on this slate. Like, he stands out as the guy that has the most upside. He's in the best matchup. Again, positives with Deshaun Watson. Like I said, he's been running the ball a lot more recently. Like, not a ton, not like Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson, but he's getting 38, 50, 36, and 36 yards in the ground the last 4 games. And Detroit just cannot stop anyone. I mean, P.J. Walker and Carolina moved the ball with ease against the Detroit defense. They definitely should have scored more, Carolina, but they threw 2 picks down in the red zone, so it could have been a lot uglier than it was. So I think Deshaun Watson right now is the clear top play of the slate at quarterback, the guy that has the highest floor, in my opinion, as well as the highest ceiling. So really like Deshaun Watson at quarterback. Lamar Jackson, I think I'm done with him, man. I think I'm done with him. This Ravens offense is just not the same. You couldn't really get a better matchup there against Tennessee, and he only puts up 17 fantasy points. Just a letdown. We'll talk about that in the recap video when I talk about the early look video for the main slate week 12, which I'll have up probably later today as well if you guys are interested in that. But yeah, Lamar is just he's struggling. The Ravens offense is struggling. It's just not the same as last year. Like, he's still getting rushing yards like 65, 58, 55, and 51 yards in the ground, but just struggling to pass the ball. 208, 170, 249, 186 yards through the air. It's just not going to get it done. And the matchup here against Pittsburgh is not great, so I think right now he's just more of a contrarian play. Like, I still think he can get you there, but based off what we're seeing this year, it's hard to feel really comfortable with it. Sure, the price came down a bit, but I just feel a lot more comfortable getting up to Deshaun Watson for a little bit more. So, yeah, I'm not saying Lamar's out of play. I just think right now he's more of a contrarian play at his price. Big Ben at 6'6". It's so surprising, this Pittsburgh offense. I don't get it, but back-to-back games where they were playing with a huge lead and they just don't run the ball. And it looks like this trend is just going to continue. So that game against Cincinnati, they won 36-10. He threw the ball 46 times. That game against the Jags, complete control the entire game. He threw 46 times. So, like, he's going to throw 40-plus times no matter what. Like, if they're playing from behind, playing from ahead. The matchup here against Baltimore is not necessarily the best, but actually Tennessee did put up some points. So, Big Ben, with the positives with Big Ben, it's just the volume, right? He's going to throw the ball a ton. You have 3, clear guys you compare him with. Juju's status is up in there, but I think he'll be good to go for Thursday. So, yeah, I think Big Ben's a nice play in the mid-range at that price. Stafford at 5'8". Detroit's offense really struggled that game against Carolina. Put up a donut. Yeah, that is not going to get it done. Now, this is a much. I mean, Carolina wasn't like a terrible matchup either, but this is a pretty good spot here against Houston. Houston definitely one of the worst defenses in the league, so this is, you would assume Detroit's going to put up some points in this one. I think Stafford's fine if you need someone cheap at quarterback. Like, he would probably be the guy, below 6K. If I'm going to play someone cheap, it would be Stafford. So, yeah, I think Stafford's a decent cheap option. Andy Dalton at 5'6", probably not going to go there. I mean, the offense did look decent. He threw 3 touchdowns, but I would probably feel a little bit more comfortable with Stafford for a little bit more. And Alex Smith at 5'4", yeah, you can give him a look as well, but I think I feel a little bit more comfortable with Stafford. So the quarterbacks, really for me, I think it's probably Deshaun Watson at the top. He's the clear guy for me. I think Big Ben in the mid-range just because of the volume alone. If you need someone cheap, it probably would be Stafford. You can look to Lamar as a contrarian play. This will probably be the slate he just goes off because I'm finally off him. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts there on quarterback. So let's talk about running back. Running back's kind of ugly on this slate. I definitely think this is shaping up to be a 4 wide receiver in your lineup slate, right? I don't think you're going to want to play 3 running backs just because, depending on injuries, we might not have like 3 clear running backs to even play. So Zeke's at the top at 6'8". I think for volume alone, he stands out as one of the safer options. The workload is going down a bit. They're still giving Tony Pollard more work. He is, where is Tony Pollard? He's at the flat min. Last 3 games, 9, 7, 5 carries. So they're getting him a little bit involved, more than he was earlier in the season. But the matchup against Washington is not necessarily the best, but I expect about 20 touches from Zeke. The volume for the passing game has gone down a bit, with only 2, 3, and 2 targets. Early in the season, he was a guy that, at times will put up double-digit targets. So I think for volume alone right now, Zeke is one of the safer options just because if you look at the other running backs in the slate, hard to feel comfortable with anyone getting like a ton of work. Now, DeAndre Swift, if he's available to go, he would probably be my favorite running back on the slate at this price against Houston. So this is something to monitor. If he doesn't play, yeah, we got to consider AP and Carryon, unfortunately, for value. Neither has a ton of upside, but they're at cheap enough price points. The matchup's good that we can look to them for value. So right now, this is something to monitor. If Swift plays, I really like him just because, one, he's, last couple games, the workload has been going up on him, 13 and 16 carries, 5 and 5 targets, and the matchup is great here against Houston's defense. So Swift is a guy that if he does play, would probably be my favorite running back play on the slate. James Conner, he's still going to play a good amount, but they're just not running the ball. Like, he had a good game. He had 13 carries for 89 yards, but they got to the goal line at the 1, and they vultured him with Benny Snell. And they're giving McFarland some work, too. So, yeah, Benny Snell, I think he had, 7 carries, and he vultured Connor. Unfortunate if you play Connor. McFarland is getting out there a bit, too, as well. So, it's, 6.2K, I guess, is in play for Connor, but, it's hard to expect more than 15 touches from him if you're just looking at the last 3 games. And there's been good matchups, good game script. The game against Cincinnati, they're playing from ahead. He had 15 touches. The game against the Jags, they were clearly playing from ahead the entire game. He had 16 touches. So, and this matchup is not necessarily the best. So I think Connor right now is just more of a contrarian play. Now, Antonio Gibson at 6K, tricky one because it's going to be a pretty even split. But this is how you think the game will flow. So you saw against Cincinnati, they were playing from ahead. He had 16 carries, a couple targets as well. He got a little bit more work when they're playing from ahead. If they're playing from behind, you're going to want to look to McKissick. So, and the matchup is pretty solid here. He's a really talented running back. Everyone, including myself, they should give him more work, but they're still giving McKissick a lot of the passing down work, which does make Gibson a little riskier, just because he has someone else to fight for targets with. So, Gibson, this situation, I think the price is pretty decent. The matchup's obviously really good, but there is some risk involved because if Washington falls behind, they kind of phase him out a little bit. McKissick's at 5'1", right? He is their passing down running back. They didn't utilize him a ton here just because they didn't really need to. Against Cincinnati, right? Burrow went down, and that game was just really, really slow after that. It was unfortunate because I had McLaurin, I had Boyd, who were both going off in the first half, and then when Burrow got injured, Cincinnati couldn't move the ball at all with the backup quarterback, and Washington playing from the lead just slowed it down. So that was super tilting. But, McKissick's a guy that, besides last game, had 15, 14 targets in games they're playing from behind. So this, again, it's all about how you think this game flows. If you think Washington's playing from ahead, it's Gibson. Playing from behind, it's McKissick. Duke Johnson's at 5'7". He's been somewhat chalky last couple slates and has been a complete bust. 5 and 6 fantasy points. He's still playing a majority of the game. The matchup's good. We still have no David Johnson, so you can go to him. He's going to be low owned just because he's burned a lot of people. He burned myself 2 weeks ago. I know some people saw him back to the wall their last game against New England and got burned. So I think he's an interesting contrarian play for that reason, because he's not a lot of people going to want to go back there. But yeah, right now he's just not getting it done. He's still, again, going to play majority of the game. He's still a guy that is good pass catching running back. So not saying he's out of play. Things right now more of a contrarian option. Now, with the Baltimore running backs, this is something interesting. So let's go to Baltimore, and let's take a look at Mark Ingram. He got 2 carries. Let's take a look at Gus Edwards, right? Because this is usually a 3-headed monster. 3 carries. Okay, let's take a look at J.K. Dobbins. 15 carries, 2 catches and 2 targets. So he was clearly the guy last week. Now, can we expect that to continue? I don't think you can feel super confident about it. But it's good to see that Dobbins was like the clear guy last game. So at 5.5K, if I'm going to take a shot on any of these Ravens running backs, I'll just take the shot in Dobbins and hope he gets the majority of the work again. I know the matchup's not great. I know, Baltimore running backs that don't get targeted a ton. So I'm not saying like Dobbins is an amazing play, but if you're going to make me pick one of those Baltimore running backs, I guess I would just go Dobbins. And then we got to talk about the Detroit running backs. This is assuming if Swift is out, then yeah, AP and Carrion are in play. Now, Detroit's not going to put up a donut again. They're not. Like, AP had 7 carries for 18 yards, 1 catch. Carrion, not much better. I think it's 6 carries, 17 yards, 2 catches, and 5 targets. So, looking like, again, Carrion is going to be the passing down running back a bit more, AP more the early down back. So, of these two, I would probably feel a little bit more comfortable with Carrion just because his pass catching ability. So Carrion's a 4.3, AP's a 4.7. I would probably slightly prefer Carrion, but both would be playable here if DeAndre Swift is out. And then that really wraps it up. Like CJ Prosise got a couple touches last week for Houston, but not enough for you to go there. Again, Pollard, he'll probably get 5 to 8 carries. I mean, he broke a long one last game, but Zeke is still a guy that's going to get a majority of the touches in that backfield. And then, yeah, Gus Edwards, the snaps went way down for him. So that's my thoughts on running back, and it's kind of an uglier position for this Thanksgiving slate. Like, I definitely think this is a slate you're probably going to want to use 4 wide receivers in your lineup. So let's talk about wide receivers now. McLaurin's at 7K. He continues to, average 8-9 targets a game. The matchup here against Dallas is obviously really good, and he's continued to put up good fantasy point outings with bad quarterback play. So I think Terry McLaurin's a really solid play. If you can get to him, he's a guy that obviously has upside. I think he's a really, really solid play at the top. I also really like Will Fuller at 6'4". That's just too cheap. We have news that Cobb is probably out. Got to keep an eye on Kenny Stills as well. So, it's going to be a lot of Fuller, a lot of Cooks. We'll talk about a possible value here in Kiki Cutie. But yeah, Fuller is a guy that has the big play upside. He's been targeted 8 times in back-to-back games. He's a guy that can look to in the red zone, right? He had a stretch of games where he had like 5 or 6 straight games with a touchdown. And again, this matchup is great. This is probably the game I feel the best about stacking with Houston and Detroit just because both defenses really, really struggle to stop the opposition. So Fuller's a guy that I do like a good amount here. Him as well as Cooks are clear guys you compare with Deshaun Watson. Cooks is a lot cheaper. He's at 5.3, continuing to get a good amount of targets. So I like both these guys. Cooks is a little bit cheaper. He'll probably be a little more popular, but I like both. I think you can even play both together if you want to, with Cooks and with Fuller. As far as the Pittsburgh receivers, Deontay Johnson, Claypool, and Juju mentioned, I like Deontay the best last week. It was just a price point thing. He went off. Again, basically all the games he's been healthy, he has put up an amazing performance. Back-to-back games over 100 yards, 11, 16 targets last game. Yeah, every single game, basically, he's been healthy. He's got double-digit targets. So he is their number one guy. He is. It's just a matter of can he stay healthy. So 6.2K is still a little bit underpriced. I know the matchup is, sure, not necessarily the best, but Deontay Johnson is still the guy for me at Pittsburgh. Even though he's the most expensive now, I still like him the best. Claypool's at 6'1". He just continues to score touchdowns basically every single week. Definitely does boost his floor a bit for a guy that they're just looking to a ton in the red zone. So Claypool I think is a fine option. Again, I do prefer Deontay just because of the targets, but they're still giving Claypool a good amount of work too, right? 13, 10, and 8 targets. Perfectly fine play as well. Then Juju, something to keep an eye on. His status is up in the air, suffered a toe injury, so we'll see. If he's out, potential value in a guy like James Washington. If he's in, he's kind of been their number 3 guy. He's still putting up decent performances. Again, all 3 priced pretty similar. I would probably rank him again Deontay, then Claypool, then Juju, so how they're priced. Galladay at 6K. Got to keep an eye on his injury status. If he plays, I like him a lot here at 6K. Probably the clear run back guy if you're kind of running like a Watson stack with one of his receivers. I think the clear guy to run it back with is Galladay if he does play. If he misses, then probably maybe a guy like Marvin Jones Jr. or Hawkinson. So this is just, we got to monitor the injury news. Galladay is a guy that we can expect 7 to 8 targets a game from. He's got big play upside. The last couple games he was healthy, he had over 100 yards. So I do like Galladay, but again, got to keep an eye on the injury news there with him. As far as the Dallas receivers go, Cooper's at 5.7. I think is a fair play. Obviously doesn't have as much upside with Andy Dalton at quarterback. Last 4 games, 7, 5, 6, and 7 targets. It's not bad, but not really someone I'm prioritizing. CeeDee Lamb out of the slots at 5.4. Again, 5, 7, 6 targets. I think all these Dallas receivers are fine. We'll talk about Gallup for value. Was a little bit of a letdown last week. I think they're decent options, but not really guys that I'm going to try to jam in. If you land on one of those Dallas guys, I think that is fine. Hollywood Brown at 4.7. Or let's talk about Marvin Jones Jr. Didn't want to skip over him. So he's at 5.5. I think that's a fair price for him. Again, Detroit really struggled offensively. I don't expect that again here in this spot, especially if Galladay's out. I think Marvin Jones Jr. does look like a pretty decent play here in the mid-range. He would be the number 1 guy. Also, we could look to Hawkins as well as maybe a couple of value plays. But yeah, Marvin Jones, if Galladay is out, I think does make for a pretty nice player in the mid-range. If Galladay's in, I think he's fine, but I would just prefer the extra $500 for Galladay. Hollywood Brown's a 4.7. It's nothing more than a contrarian player now. You can't trust the passing offense right now with Baltimore. You can't do it. So 4.7K is really cheap. He still has big play upside. If you want a contrarian stack, yeah, you can go Lamar and Hollywood Brown, but again, it's hard to feel comfortable with it. And they got Dez actually involved, Dez Bryant a little bit more involved last week. They have like 4 or 5 receivers they'll use. So it's nothing more than a contrarian play right now. Willie Sneads, I'm not going there. 4.3. Did have 7 targets, but I feel more comfortable with some other value plays we'll talk about. Now, with the Detroit guys, Amendola's status is also up in the air. We'll see if he plays. If Galladay's out and Amendola plays, definitely someone you can look to out of the slot. If both are out, then we could look to guys like, let's go to Detroit real quick. Marvin Hall, Cephas, and Agnew. Agnew's the return guy, but he actually got, 6 targets last game. Mohamed Sanu was activated as well, but he didn't play a ton. So, do I feel super comfortable with a lot of these value guys besides Marvin Jones Jr.? Not really. I guess if I'm going to pick one, it'd be Marvin Hall, but it's not like he's getting targeted a good amount either. So, yeah, the Detroit value is not amazing. Other value wide receivers, let's go up a bit here. So, yeah, Dez Bryant's at 3.6. He had 5 targets, 4 catches. I think you can give him a look. Not someone I'm super comfortable with. Michael Gallup's at 3.5, so he was a little bit of a letdown. He only had 2 catches and 5 targets, but he's still going to be out there majority of the game. I think you can still look to him for value. He still has that big play upside as well. So Gallup's a fine value option. Randall Cobb out. So let's go to Houston now. And we have Cobb looking like he's out. We'll keep an eye on Stills. If Kenny Stills can't go either, then I think Kiki Cutie is actually a pretty solid value play. He'll play out of the slot. He came in, he had 2 catches and 4 targets. He'll play the Randall Cobb role. And at 3.4K, that's a decent enough price for him. So, and we know Houston likes running through wide receiver sets a lot. Randall Cobb was a guy that would play 60 to 70% of the snaps. So I think Kiki Cutie would definitely be a viable value option if both Cobb and Stills are out. If Stills plays, I would assume he would probably be the number 3 guy. So yeah, if he's good to go, you can definitely go to Stills. Again, I don't think Cobb will play, so that'll be something to monitor, but definitely some potential value here for Houston with their number 3 wide receiver. Other value options, like then we kind of get to the Washington guys with like Cam Sims, you have Steven Sims Jr., you have Dontrell Inman status up in the air. I don't really feel great about any of them, to be honest. Like Cam Sims last game had 2 catches and 2 targets. Steven Sims had 3 catches and 3 targets. Inman's been out for a bit, but he was their number 2 guy for a while. So if he plays, and you can give a look, but again, don't deal with the hamstring injuries. That's concerning. So I mean, yeah, they have Isaiah Wright too. Besides McLaurin, at least for wide receiver, it's hard to feel comfortable with any of these Washington guys. So I think that really about wraps up for wide receiver. Let me see if there's anyone else I wanted to mention. I think that's it. Like Baltimore, yeah, they'll still give Boykin some snaps. They'll still give Devin Duvernay some snaps. If you want to take a dart throw, James Washington. That's the last guy I'll mention here at 3K. If Juju Smith is out, I would assume he would be the number 3 guy. He would be potential value at min price on someone that would look like a pretty decent option if Juju Smith-Schuster's out. So, again, another situation we'll have to monitor there. But let's move on to tight end. So, mentioned, Mark Andrews is the only guy I would pair with Lamar Jackson last week, and he was the only guy that really got there, right? He had 5 catches and 7 targets, 96 yards, and a touchdown. Once again, if you're playing Lamar, the only guy I would probably pair him with is Mark Andrews. Like, if you want to take a dart throw on Hollywood Brown, sure, or Dez Bryant, but I just don't really feel super comfortable with the Baltimore passing attack. The only guy I think I would look to is Mark Andrews, who's had, getting a good amount of targets, a guy to look to in the red zone. So I think he's a fine play at 5.2. Hockenson at 4.7, I like a good amount, especially if Galladay's out. If Galladay's out, it's going to be a lot of Hockenson, a lot of Marvin Jones Jr. 4.7K, I think is a fair price. I don't think he's going to be like super, super popular, but he would be like a bring back if you're going with like a Houston stack and want to bring it back with someone. Hawkinson's definitely a guy you can look to. 3 of the last 4 games, 10, 8, and 7 targets. So, yeah, I do like Hockenson a decent amount there in the mid-range. Eric Ebron's at 4.1. I think is an okay option. I would probably prefer Hockenson, though, for a little bit more. As far as, there's a couple other cheap options we can look to for tight end, like Dalton Schultz at 3.8. Targets have been pretty consistent for him. 8, 7, and 6 targets. 3.8K. Yeah, I think he's a fine option. Right. I also think Logan Thomas is still fine, even though he busted last game. Just because, again, Washington, that game just was super disappointing once Burrow got injured. Like, nothing else happened throughout that game. So, Logan Thomas, he's going to play. He played, 90% of the offensive snaps. Like, the previous game played 100%. He's still running a good amount of routes, and the matchup's good. So, besides, Terry McLaurin, he would probably be the next guy I would look to if I'm targeting a pass catcher here for Washington. And then, if you want to take a shot in one of these Houston tight ends, you can, but they will utilize 2. Like, Akins has been, he was decent last week. He had 5 catches and 6 targets. But again, they still have Darren Fells as well. So, hard to feel super comfortable with those guys. Again, you can go there, but you're not going to feel amazing about it. And then, finally, with defense, it's a tricky one. I don't really want to play the Lions or the Texans defense. I feel like that's the game that's going to have the most points scored. Do I really want to play the Cowboys defense? Not really. And I usually like spending down a defense, so it's a tricky one. Like, maybe Washington's defense. I don't know. This will be a situation where defense is such a high variance position that I think just go with what works for your lineup. Like, if you have enough salary left over, then yeah, get to Pittsburgh. But really, I don't think there's a standout play in defense with their prices. So it's a situation where, like, if I have 2.7K remaining, like, I'm just going to throw the Texans defense in there and just hope they don't kill me. So that's kind of how I feel about defense, at least right now. We'll talk about it more on live stream as well. But yeah, that's really it for the video today, guys. So if you have been enjoying the content so far, I'd really appreciate it if you leave a like button on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you know when I upload videos and know when I go live again. 45 minutes before lock on Thanksgiving. Make sure to check out the live stream, guys. Super, super excited about this 3-game slate. But yeah, thanks again. I hope you guys have a good day. Again, early look video for week 12 will be up probably later today as well for Sunday's slate. So thanks again, guys, and I will see you all later.